You spend years getting to know Tony Stark, so much that maybe you know him better than your best friend. Then you wake up one morning to discover Tony isn't the guy you believed he was. Don't panic, we've got you covered, and going to help you blast through all the lies to get to the iron truth.
Hey, I admit it.
Click the red subscribe button so you don't miss out on any future CBR videos.
Big man in a suit of armor. Take that off, what are you?
Genius, billionaire, playboy, philanthropist.
Iron Man Origin. Every comic book fan knows that if you stick around long enough, the backstory you once knew ends up on the rewriting block. Retconning is a favorite pastime of comic book companies, and Marvel's no exception. Thanks to the Marvel Cinematic Universe and real-life global politics, Tony Stark's superhero origin got several rewrites.
Yeah, we don't really need to start a conversation.
The Iron Man films would have audiences believe that Iron Man was a result of Tony's kidnapping during the Afghanistan War. However, this is not the original origin to Iron Man. The basic plot points of his story remain consistent over the last 40 years. Stark is a genius inventor who inherited Stark Industries from his deceased parents. The company is into weapons manufacturing, and that takes Tony overseas. However, this is where the story tends to veer apart and create a discontinuity in the truth of the Stark origin. The details of exactly how the shrapnel ends up in Tony's chest gets fuzzy. Sometimes he steps on a landmine, and other times enemy fire causes damage. Iron Man was developed during the Cold War by Stan Lee. Then the origin story was tied to the Vietnam War. Still, that wasn't modern enough as time went on, and the location and war of Tony's origin was updated to the Gulf War and then Afghanistan.
What do you remember about your dad, huh?
He was cold. He was calculating. He never told me he loved me. He never even told me he liked me.
Tony Stark is a Stark by birth. Howard Anthony Walter Stark, founder of Stark Industries, a brilliant engineer, inventor, genius, was beloved husband to Maria and father to Anthony Tony Stark. As Tony grew up, he was close to his mother and had a strained, tense relationship with his father.
Tony, what are you doing back there? What is that? Put that back.
Howard and Maria Stark died on the Ides of March in a mysterious car accident. Tony believed his father had never been proud of him, and Howard's death changed Tony's life forever. What if we told you that Tony had been lied to his entire life, and Howard and Maria Stark were not his biological parents? They were his adopted parents. That information was kept secret from him for most of his life. In the International Iron Man series, it was revealed that Tony's mother is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent Amanda Armstrong, and his father is Double Agent Jude, working secretly for Hydra. Amanda killed Jude when she discovered he was a double agent. She put their son Tony up for adoption, and the Starks took him in and raised him as their own son. They were unable to conceive a healthy child. Tony was adopted by the Starks when he was an infant.
I am Iron Man. The suit and I are one.
The suit is Tony's bodyguard. Unlike many other superheroes in the Marvel Universe, both cinematic and in the comic books, Tony Stark is not an enhanced human. He wasn't injected with a super serum like Captain America. He didn't get bit by a radioactive spider. Stark is simply a man. Yes, he possesses genius-level intellect and can invent practically any machine, but physically is no different than any other man walking down the street. When Iron Man first came on the scene in the comic books, he and Tony Stark were separate entities. In the initial stages of Tony Stark's career, Iron Man was always seen independent of Tony. Tony would never admit that was in fact Iron Man. Instead, he would talk about his friendship with Iron Man, mentioning he could get Iron Man to help in a tough spot. Eventually, it evolves into the story that Iron Man is Stark's bodyguard. He works for Stark.
I'm sorry, Mr. Stark, but do you honestly expect us to believe that that was a bodyguard in a suit?
This was, of course, a lie. Tony Stark was always Iron Man. This falsehood was concocted to protect Tony's identity. After all, without the suit, he's only a normal man. He even played this dual role with the Avengers for a while, pretending to fund it as Tony Stark and be in it as Iron Man.
Oh, I'm sorry, they're only coded to me. What does that mean? I got you covered.
Only Tony Stark can be Iron Man. At the end of the first Iron Man film, Tony Stark holds a press conference. Tony decides he was finally going to tell the truth. In a back and forth with Christine Everhart, he says,
I am Iron Man.
Is this really the whole truth? Or is Tony Stark only pretending to tell the truth? We think Tony isn't being as honest as he could be. Yes, Tony Stark is Iron Man. He developed the technology. Tony Stark regularly puts on the suit to defend Earth against its biggest villains. The thing is, though, Tony isn't the only Iron Man. There have been more than 20 characters in the Marvel Universe, both in the comics and on film, who have worn some version of the suit and fought as Iron Man. Tony isn't the Iron Man, he is merely one of the Iron Men. Iron Man Original to be be exact. Perhaps the best-known individual in Marvel to wear the suit in addition to Tony was James Rhodes.
I am Iron Patriot.
Listen, War Machine was a little too aggressive, all right? This sends a better message.
Other notable wearers of the suit include Pepper Potts, Riri Williams, and Deadpool.
I got a ton of new tech. I got a prehensile suit. I got bomb disposal. Catches explosions midair.
Iron Man is only a suit. Next to Captain America, the Iron Man suit is one of the most recognizable costumes across all comic books. But what do you really know about the Iron Man armor? While we've seen some variations of the suit throughout the Iron Man trilogy and Avengers films, it misleads the audience into thinking there is one suit that Tony uses. This is not the case. The Iron Man armor is considered the foundation of the suit and contains the basic components that comprise the different tactical systems. From the primary armor, Tony builds different suits for combat. There are 3 categories of suits: basic, advanced, and specialized. Each one of the suits contains the fundamental weaponry we've come to equate with Iron Man: repulsors, propulsion systems, missiles, interface with the mainframe computer. From this, Tony develops specialized suits. These are called Mark and then the model number. There are Iron Man suits for deep-sea diving, the Hulkbuster suit to fight the Incredible Hulk, space traveling,
Perhaps if you intend to visit other planets, we should improve the exosystems.
a stealth version, and one suit that transformed from a flying red car into Iron Man. The variant suits contain items like vibranium blades, lasers, flamethrowers. Tony has over 50 variations of the Iron Man suits at his disposal.
You know, the question I get asked most often is, Tony, how do you go to the bathroom in the suit? Just like that.
Happy Hour with Tony Stark. What are the 3 characterizations that have come to mind when you hear the name Tony Stark? A genius inventor. How about a man who really knows how to have an enjoyable time at parties and with the ladies? Does the term alcoholic also come to mind? If you are a fan of the Marvel Cinematic Universe or a newcomer to Team Iron Man, you are led to believe Tony doesn't have any problems with drinking. It's obvious he enjoys himself. The Iron Man trilogy romanticizes the idea of the billionaire playboy who knows how to work hard and play hard. The films allude to Tony liking a good cocktail.
It would be irresponsible not to drink. I'm just talking about a nightcap.
Hot sake.
Yes, 2, please.
During the opening sequence of Iron Man, while traveling in the desert, he has an iced drink in his hand. However, the film omits a huge part in misleading audience about the truth of Tony Stark. He has a drinking problem, and he's had a long history of battling this issue. The Demon in a Bottle comic arc, where Tony must face his drinking problem, is considered a classic. Why was this left out? Studios probably felt that it didn't fit with the Iron Man they wanted to create on screen. However, to really know and understand Tony Stark, you need to know everything about him, especially this.
An intelligence organization that fears intelligence, historically not awesome.
He isn't the rebel you think he is. Tony Stark is undoubtedly one of the most complex characters in the Marvel Universe. With over 40 years of stories, his public persona has been cultivated to give off the rebel without a cause vibe. He doesn't consider himself a follower and doesn't like authority too much. He's a leader who throws out more sarcasm and jokes than orders, a leader who doesn't want all the responsibilities of being in charge. Is this really who Tony Stark is, or is it a lie? We think the public persona of Tony Stark is a total fabrication meant to hide the fact that deep down inside, Tony follows the rules. He isn't totally all impulse and gratification. Remember, during Civil War, it is Iron Man who endorses and fights for the Superhero Registration Act, which effectively imposes hundreds of rules and restrictions on superheroes. That would mean Tony would have to answer for his actions and ask permission first before doing anything. Tony was also the Secretary of Defense for the United States for a period. Isn't working for the government kind of like working for the man every day? Yeah, he may have been the boss, but he had to answer to a lot of people and deal with all the red tape.
Why does your vision sound like Jarvis?
We reconfigured Jarvis's matrix to create something new.
Jarvis is a computer program. When the Iron Man trilogy came to the big screen and ushered in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, many of the truths of the comic books were changed to suit the film's needs. This is not an uncommon practice. However, it can meddle with what is truth and what are lies. A falsehood that comes out of the Iron Man films comes from a major change to the beloved comic book character Jarvis. Before he transformed into the Vision, Jarvis was Iron Man's sarcastic artificial intelligence sidekick, always the voice in the air ready with a comeback.
Good evening, Colonel. Can I give you a lift?
Very funny.
What What if we told you that Jarvis isn't an artificial intelligent life form at all, but a real human being? Jarvis is really Edwin Jarvis, Tony Stark's butler. Edwin Jarvis is the human companion to Tony Stark in the Avengers in the comic books. He started working for Howard and Maria Stark when they passed away. He stayed on to help Tony. He was there for their first meeting at the Avengers mansion. He has no special powers, but he is one of the most loyal characters in the Marvel Universe.
You've been called the Da Vinci of our time. What do you say to that?
Absolutely ridiculous. I don't paint.
Tony Stark is Robert Downey Jr. With the release of Iron Man in 2008, comic books began to see a shift in the visualization of their long-standing characters. Setting aside the technical and artistic differences between Marvel artists, the basic features of superheroes stay consistent. This includes the fact that characters rarely seem to age on the page, but that's a whole separate issue for another time. Tony Stark has always had short, dark hair and facial hair, usually some combination of a goatee and mustache. With the casting of Robert Downey Jr. as Stark in the cinematic universe, the image of his comic book counterpart began to shift. If you were only a fan of the film, you think Tony Stark is Downey, but this isn't the case. In fact, Tony didn't look like anyone except for himself. His was unique. To tie into the films, comics began to model Stark after Robert Downey Jr. in a more overt fashion, making him less of his own person and more of a composite. Now, when you pick up a comic book, you can see the influence of Robert Downey Jr.'s features in the face and mannerisms of Tony Stark. This trend has taken a hold of many Marvel franchises, like Thor and Spider-Man, and if more films are released, it seems it will continue.
If we can't accept limitations, we're boundaryless. We're no better than the bad guys.
Why Tony started Civil War. Synonymous with the Marvel Cinematic Universe is the Avengers, the two best known of which and most loved Avengers being Captain America and Iron Man. With the release of Avengers and Age of Ultron, we saw this relationship come to life on screen. However, the events of Captain America, Civil War, altered the dynamic and course of this friendship, well, perhaps not forever, at least for now. Last time we saw these two on screen, they were opposite sides of the Sokovia Accords, aka the Superhuman Registration Act. In the film, the events leading up to Tony's acceptance of superheroes registering comes from the events in Age of Ultron, where Sokovia is turned into rubble after battling Ultron. Tony is approached by a grieving parent of a child who lost their life during the Avengers battle, and it sways him to sign on. In the comics, this is not the inciting incident for Stark. The film made up a fake event instead of using its source material as inspiration. In the comic books, a group from the New Warriors can't control their powers, causing destruction, which includes a school. The public's reaction to this tragedy causes Tony to suggest the Registration Act. That puts him and Captain America at odds with one another.
Are you Tony Stank?
Yes, this is Tony Stank. You're in the right place. Thank you for that.
Tony Stark, we hardly knew you. How do you feel about Iron Man now that you know the truth about him? Does this change your opinion of Tony? Let us know in the comments below if any of these lies have changed Iron Man for you. Remember to like and share this video. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button. We have videos daily and don't want you to miss out on a single one.